Okay, I knew somebody would pop in. Okay, today we are beginning on the form of the letter Beit. It's the second of our forums up there. Forums, not forms. But the form of the letter Beit. And Josh, I'm going to put you to work right off the bat. We're going to start off with a handout because this is too complicated to grasp without visuals. Well, I can't get it. There we go. Thank you, sir.
Does anyone else want to put in? Thank you.
Several variations were used for the original pictograph of the letter Beit, including, I'm just going to let you look at them on the sheet because I don't know really how to explain them. But they're different variations of the pictograph that was chosen by the religious leaders. Each of these pictographs is representative of a house or a tent. The pictograph that is chosen was chosen because it best represents the nomadic tents of the Hebrews. The tent was divided into two sections. Now, if you look, oh, I guess I don't have it up there. Let me pass this around then. This makes more sense. Yeah. One more time, Josh. This is the pictograph that was selected to represent the letter. Morning, guys.
Morning.
We're just getting started. But this is the pictograph that was chosen because it best represents the nomadic tents of the Hebrews, and it goes with
that one is the one, or that one is the one?
this one.
Okay.
And we have one up there.
No.
Well, it's in the little small thing, but
Yeah.
it goes with the opening is up. Okay, but again, if you ever go to Israel, you'll more than likely see those nomads in their black tents. And why black, I don't know. They're out in the extreme heat, and
That absorbs, doesn't it?
I thought the black made it hotter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
White by black cars are fire.
Yeah.
Yes. They're definitely.
But they always have a flap open. Okay? The tent was divided into two sections. Inside, there's a men's and a women's section, with the entrance at the front of the tent in the men's section, and the entrance from the men's into the women's section. So the women's section would be back in the far corner. I assume that's so the men can protect them if something comes in. The Hebrew name for this letter, Beit, is equivalent to the Greek name Beta and the Arabic name Beit, which is spelled B-E-Y-T. This letter is pronounced as a B, generally pronounced like a B, but sometimes if it doesn't have the dot, and we've talked about this before, but if it doesn't have the dot in the middle, then it becomes the Hebrew letter vet, which has a V sound. So there are a few of these letters that will have more than one sound, more than one pronunciation. Generally, they're pronounced the same, but in this case, the V sound does change a little bit. When the Beit appears as the one you see up here with the doggish mark, it represents the letter B. There are various rules in Hebrew grammar, and if you want to know those rules, talk to Michael, because he's our grammar guy. Various rules in Hebrew grammar that stipulate why and when the doggish is used. when two letters, or pictographs actually, are put together, a parent root word is formed. When the bait, meaning house, is combined with the nun, meaning a seed, which continues the next generation, that parent root is ben. It's be for the bait and in for the nun. So it's ben. You'll see it on the paper that's going around. The two letters of this root have the combined meaning of the house continues, and is usually translated as a son, or the one who continues the house to the next generation. Okay?
Cool seed with the dot, seed.
I'm sorry?
Nothing, no, it's okay, I'm just trying to get it all.
Oh, I see that. Yeah, the seed. Yeah, the seed, and I don't have that pictograph. Well, it's on the paper,
Yeah.
but yeah, it does represent a seed. It represents new life, is basically what it. But we'll get to that when we get down to the letter nun. The early Semitic letter.
My mind went someplace else with that one.
I'm sorry.
My mind went someplace else with that one.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
Someplace good or bad?
Well,
Let's not go there.
well, it's reproduction type thing.
Okay. Well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is.
I don't ever remember seeing a Y in there before.
A Y.
The bait, that says BERYT.
That's a different different spelling for the word. It's the, what did I just say? The
Pronounce it B.
I know there's a different sound, but I've just never seen a different spelling.
well, that's what I'm saying. It's not the Hebrew spelling.
Oh,
It is the, I just read it. Now I've already forgotten it. It's the is it Phoenician? There's Michael. I'm sorry, my mind's moved on. I've lost where it was at. It might be Arabic. Yes, that's what it is. Arabic. But it's the same letter, but it's spelled differently in the Arabic. Okay, I have no idea where I stopped.
Makes you wonder though.
And I have to start over,
The-
count and change.
The early, the early
Really
Sem-
wonder though. That's another thing that kind of surprised me with the seed.
uh-huh.
Was that before they knew that what it was actually was in man?
I'm sure it is.
I'm sure it was, but I'm thinking.
Scientific.
Well,
So, yeah,
you have to understand now. These letters are given by God.
Right, but I'm just thinking. In Hebrew, like, did they ever really realize that until before scientifically?
Well, the Bible talks about seed and how Adam knew Eve, and
But this guy just proves that, like, the numbers that Michael was talking about, that this was all planned out.
oh yeah, it was
It-
but it's planned out by
Everything's
God.
pre-planned, yeah, everything's pre-planned.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay,
Well, I've walked in the middle of, I'm trying to catch up where you guys are, so.
We're talking about,
Seeds and numbers is all here.
yeah, we're talking about the form of the letter. And I'm explaining that, well, I'm kind of confused myself now. Let him have
You
those.
were on that line that
Let him
says
have
F is
this.
the house, and then N is the nun.
He's younger than you are.
Like, you need a stenographer.
I do. Yeah, I do. We're talking about the doggish mark and how it would be pronounced one way or the other, the bet or the vet. And here we go. Let me just reread this, and then maybe it'll make sense. When two letters or two pictographs are put together, a parent root is formed. When the bait, meaning house, is combined with the nun, meaning seed, which continues the next generation, the parent root ben is formed. The two letters of this root have the combined meaning of the house continues and usually translated as a son, the one who continues the house to the next generation. Now the discussion came in about when this letter was first written, did they know what the seed was? I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, scientifically, God knew though.
God, and that's what I was saying,
And that's why I was like, the numbers and that kind of like show more and more.
it's all planned.
It's
Yeah,
all planned.
yeah.
It had to have a house to take care of the seed,
Yeah, yeah.
like
But it works both ways, because then the seed continues the house. And basically what it comes down to is the Son. And we know that Jesus is the Son. So he continues the house of God. Okay, the early Semitic letter morphed into the Middle Semitic script, into the late Semitic script. And again, that's on your paper. Maybe it's not yet. It's the next paper.
So why did it?
No, it's in here, it's on here.
It is in there? Okay.
Why did it move? Was it because of how people said it, or was it just because of?
No, it's not how they said it, it's how they wrote it. Remember that in the beginning, God spoke the word.
Right.
Okay? So in Abraham's day, when Abraham's the one who was credited with writing the first 5 books of the Bible, there was no written language until Moses came down off the mountain. That's when the first. Okay, Michael's got me covered here. Go ahead.
I will say, we don't know that there was until that point, but there's the way that people were gathering around and building the Tower of Babel. It makes you wonder if they had a written version of that language. That's the only reason I like.
Well, according to scholars, they spent for so many years, maybe hundreds of years, we don't know, telling the stories. They were oral stories. They weren't written stories. And the first known writing that we know for sure was when God wrote on the 10 Commandments, the letters. But God already knew the letters. Okay? Is that clear as mud?
I'm tracking,
That's
and I'm
interesting
slow.
too, Dave, because that means that Hebrew is the only language that God taught man.
Yeah.
His writing was
Yeah.
what inspired the original writing of these letters, which is deep.
And we know that there,
Man-made.
as you just said, we know there was no other languages until the Tower of Babel. So that would explain where other written languages would come from.
Yeah.
So all of this is speculation to a certain extent, because Brother Van was there, but nobody else
Nobody else?
that I know.
Would you love to be able to go back in time to their campfires, sitting around at night when they were talking?
I don't know. They were attacked a lot.
They were attacked.
They were attacked.
And they still are.
That's probably when they got them at campfire time.
Okay. I'm determined to get through this paragraph. The modern Hebrew letter, which you see up here, developed out of the late Semitic. The Middle Semitic script was adopted by the Greeks to become the letter B. Now, this is interesting because other languages adopted some of the letters in their language. So the Greeks adopted the letter B, the capital letter B, and the Roman used capital B and lowercase b. The late Semitic became the number 2. So as this letter morphed into what you see here, The previous letters were kind of gone by the wayside, but that's where the number 2 developed. Okay, it is the second letter, of course, but that also is reflected in the Semitic script. When we wish to find the definition of an English word, we go to a dictionary. While this is also true with Hebrew words, and I do recommend that you get, I meant to bring mine and I couldn't find it this morning, but they make these small paperback English to Hebrew or Hebrew to English dictionaries, and they are very handy. But there are additional methods of determining the meaning of a Hebrew word. One such method is to examine its roots and provide additional insight into the word. So basically, if you remember what each of the, if you know the pictographs of each of the letters, and you put the pictographs side by side with to form a word, then you give special meaning when you look at what each letter means. Instead of just going by the word, you look at the letters, the meaning of each letter, and it adds special meaning to the word. When we wish, let's see, I just did that. The Hebrew letter Beit is derived from the West Semitic word for house. So Beit means house or tent, as well as family. Now, I've repeated this a few times, but we're bringing the family into this now. A common designation for a family is to identify the house or the house of the family patriarch, such as the house of Jacob or the house of David. The meanings of this letter are also, we touched on this last time, but I'm going to emphasize it more today with what we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But it also means in, with, inside, or within. Within, as the family resides within the house or the tent. The Hebrew language is being restored, and I think we've covered this in the past, but the Hebrew language was lost. It was considered to be a lost language because the Jews were dispersed all over the world, and a lot of Jews forgot most of them forgot how to speak Hebrew. They didn't speak it, they didn't read it, they didn't write it. And so when Israel, and that's for centuries, and then when Israel finally became a nation again, there was a need for a written and spoken language. They wanted to restore Hebrew, and it is now the official language of Israel.
And that
Now-
was as recent as, 1948?
Yeah,
When they became a state.
Yeah.
It was lost until
yeah,
then,
yeah.
which is amazing, yeah.
Who all's been to Israel? Who all's been to Ben Yehuda Street? Well, Ben Yehuda Street is named Ben Yehuda Street because Ben Yehuda is the guy who decided he was going to resurrect the Hebrew language. And he began the work in making it, restoring it. And it was a arduous journey to do that. It was not easy. It's not easy to resurrect a dead language. But anyway, it's not the lesson at all, but I thought it'd be interesting to mention. Besides, I like saying Ben Yehuda. The Hebrew language is being and has been restored just at the right time, the time that the Father knows it should be. And that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all in His hands. And now we are able to make especially prophetic connections that we were not able to make before. Because the Hebrew language has been restored, we can understand better what the prophetic word was in the Old Testament and relate it to what's happening today.
I just have
have one more note to touch on from just a minute ago. I learned yesterday the word seminary comes from the Latin word seminarium, which is the root word is seedbed.
Seedbed. That's interesting.
That's pretty interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah, I never heard that before.
There's meaning to it.
I got a question.
Yes.
Since you said that the language was restored
Uh-huh.
in 1948,
Yeah.
so what language were they speaking when they were in the camps and
Well, they-
scattered around?
They were at that time. There was no Israel, so they were in various countries, usually in Europe, in the European countries, Russia, Germany, of course, Italy, France, all over, and so they spoke the language of the nation. They didn't speak Hebrew.
So then they had
So
to
they were
learn it.
assimilated.
That's why.
So is that why they study each letter one per year?
Yes. Plus, I think that was a tradition back in the Old Testament days too. But yeah,
So some of them knew the Hebrew language, or you think the priest did, or?
I guess somebody.
when are you talking about?
Well, I mean,
Recently or then?
Before Ben Yehuda came.
No, it was a dead language. And when I mean dead, I mean in the ground, covered up,
Wow.
buried, dead.
Yeah, because didn't they find it on Ben Yehuda Street? Is that where they?
No, they put his name in Eliezer Ben Yehuda's home. Because he single-handedly, like when he says
Yeah.
he alone,
Mhm.
he made his family, he read the Torah, learned the biblical Hebrew, forced his family to speak it at home. And from there, he actually forced the use of Hebrew again, brought it back to life.
Mhm.
Which, on that point, I'll say this, a lot of people say, scholars typically say, well, the biblical Hebrew and modern Hebrew are two different languages.
Yes, they are.
I disagree, though. And here's an example why. And yes, they are, but not really. So it would be like saying Shakespeare
Mhm.
is not English.
Oh,
See, it's a different type of, it's an ancient
Yeah.
language. But if you're an English speaker fluent enough, you could read Shakespeare and learn that
True.
language. That's what
True.
Eliezer
That's what he did.
And then
That's
he brought
what he
that
did.
language back. And he modernized words. Like they didn't have words for like cars and trains in the Bible.
Mhm.
So he used the root system that you were talking about
Mhm.
to actually, and Hebrew has this built in where he used the roots to actually determine what a proper name would be in modern Hebrew for these things. And there's no other language like that has that root system.
and
It's fascinating stuff.
bear in mind, this is all true, and this was all Ben Yehuda, but it wasn't just Ben Yehuda. There's no doubt he could not have done that without God's allowing it, God ordaining it, and God helped him. Because how would you read this and know how to pronounce it? You know, it was only. I mean, yes, he put a lot of study and work into it, and he single-handedly did it. Except God
Right.
made the way. God provided, and look where it is now.
But that's the only occurrence of that in the history of mankind.
Yes.
No one's ever revived it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let alone single-handedly revived.
Dave,
And if you, 1 second, if you watch the news, and I don't recommend it, if you watch the news and you see Benjamin Netanyahu talking, most of the time he's speaking Hebrew. He's talking to his people. He's speaking Hebrew, not English. Now he's proficient in English, but he speaks the language of his people. Now, Mike.
so like you and Michael were just talking about the original and the modern Hebrew, are the animals the same for each letter? Like does the modern Hebrew Aleph stand for ox, and the original did too?
Mhm.
Are the animals unchanged
Yeah.
from the original?
Yeah, the pictographs
Are the same.
are the
from
same.
Moses to right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The meanings
Yeah.
stay, just the letters, shapes.
Yeah.
change.
Yeah,
And that in itself is interesting, like what you were talking about.
yeah, we could go into that big time too. But the for our purposes, we need to know that the pictograph is not lost. It is not forgotten. It is. This is basically the root that Michael was talking about. That you determine what the meaning of it is. So if you have a 3-letter word, if you put each of these pictographs side by side in the order of those letters, you get a better understanding of what the word means. See, Hebrew is so rich, much more, much deeper than English or German or French or anything else, because there is more meaning to each word. Okay,
Oh, sorry, Dave.
it's all right.
I mean to interrupt.
We can stop right here if we
One
have
thing
to.
I'll share and then I'll shut up.
No, it's all right.
Hebrew's amazing, and I could talk about it for weeks. But what you just said brought this back to my mind. So the best analogy I've ever heard somebody talk about Hebrew is an old rabbi talking about the Hebrew language. It's like a tree. So the trunk of the tree is the Hebrew language. Okay,
Yeah.
it's the fullness of the Hebrew language, and then the root systems like bara, right, bet, resh, aleph.
Mm-hmm.
That is 3-letter root, which means to create or to make. But it comes from a 2-letter root, bet, resh,
Mm-hmm.
which is to cut out and to form like a potter.
Mm-hmm.
And then each letter has their own meaning. Well, if you think about it, the way he explained it was the Hebrew language is the tree, and then you have a branch that has one main branch. Those are the letters. And then that branch branches off and has 2 branches, and that's the 2-letter root. And then that has 3 branches, and that's the 3-letter root. And then you get out to these multiple branches, which are the words. And then the leaves grow, and the life comes out of those words.
Yeah.
So he said it was basically a great tree of words, and I thought that was amazing how he explained that. But that explains the 2-letter roots, and there's 4-letter roots in modern Hebrew too.
That's
so they've
neat.
extended that system.
That's
the
neat.
beauty of Hebrew.
Yeah.
You could extend that system.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Wow.
It's almost like an upside down pyramid. Like starts with one and just keeps expanding outward
yeah,
for infinity.
and I
you
bet
know?
you that main letter is Aleph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a guess.
The way Yahweh has designed the Hebrew so that every word can be broken down to its 2 or 3-letter root, the meaning of the word can be seen in the meanings of the letters that form the word. That's just what we've been saying. The alphabet is what modern Hebrew calls the alphabet, but it's alphabet, meaning the 22 letters that Yahweh used to speak the universe into existence. But biblically, Aleph, Tav are the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, Aleph, Tav is easy to remember because the first and the last. Aleph is the first letter, Tav is the last letter, but in English, we call our alphabet the ABCs. The Aleph Tav is the beginning and the end. It's the full, I'm not sure how to phrase it. Maybe you can help me with this. It's the full, there's a word I'm trying to, spectrum works, the full spectrum of the letters, all the letters. It's not just the ABCs. It is the full power of the 22 letters that God created with. Okay. When they stand by themselves, the Aleph and the Bet, no hyphen or any other form of punctuation to distract its meaning, it is an expression of all the letters of the universe, which also includes the name Yahweh. So the Aleph Tav is the fullness, you might say, of what Yahweh has created, what God has created. Each individual letter is called an oat, O-A-T. Oat equals a sign. It is saying something, something else, or saying something. The word for oat in Hebrew is spelled with an aleph and a tav, with a hyphen in between. When you have 2-syllable words, the accent falls on the first syllable. For example, and Michael, you might want these. I can't pronounce these things. Let Michael look at that first, bud, and then you can pass it. These are examples of 2-syllable words that the emphasis is on the first syllable. And the only one on there that I get is the mad passet, because it means printer, and I am mad at my printer all the time.
You want me to read them? Or?
Yeah, can you? Yeah, you can read them.
Great to hear it, yeah.
So the first one is to close, which is the school. And like he was saying, you can hear the accent on where it falls.
These go.
I don't know some of these actually. Sehut.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to pronounce that one at all.
That
Sahut.
means a right, like a left and right, or a right and right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, this one's fun.
Yeah.
Sorry for those who are around me. Cheshbon,
Cheshbon.
Madpeset, which is a printer, and Abtacha, which is security.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only need one of those.
Well, I printed this out for various reasons, mostly so you could do that. But no, mainly so that they could see the Hebrew letters and how they work together. And this is as close to a Hebrew grammar lesson you're going to get in my class. As I said before, if you want grammar tips, go to Michael.
We'll be speaking eventually.
Yeah, well, in heaven we will.
Another decade.
Psalms 89:52. Blessed be the Lord forevermore. Amen and amen. Psalm 119:11 through 11 and 12. And as I've said before, Psalm 119 is the Hebrew alphabet. There are 8 verses for each letter of the Hebrew alphabet in Psalm 119. That's why it's the longest psalm in the Bible. But 119, verse 11 and 12. Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against thee. Blessed art thou, O Lord. Teach me thy statutes. I think that's appropriate with the letter Beit, because we're talking about the family of God and the household of God. God created the world with a Beit and imbued it with blessing, for he is blessed, and from him true blessing emanates. Now, this is a little out of character for me. I hope I can get this in. I'm going to do a brief Hebrew Bible study lesson. And it's in Matthew 21, the first 9 verses. If you want to look that up while I'm reading it, you can. I'm going to read it, and then I've got some things to explain about it. Verse 1, Matthew 21:1. And when they drew nigh unto Jerusalem, and were come to Bethphage, unto the Mount of Olives, then sent Jesus 2 disciples, saying unto them, Go into the village over against you, and straightway ye shall find an ass tied and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them unto me. And if any man say aught unto you, you shall say, The Lord have need of them. And straightway he will send them. All this was done that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, Tell ye the daughter of Zion, Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek and sitting upon an ass, and a colt, the foal of an ass. And the disciples went and did as Jesus commanded them, and brought the ass and the colt, and put on them their clothes, and they set him thereon. And a very great multitude spread their garments in the way. Others cut down branches from the trees and strawed them in the way. Now we all know these verses as the triumphal entry when Jesus rode down from the Mount of Olives to Jerusalem. These are very familiar passages as we read them every Palm Sunday. But if you recognize a few Hebrew words that the Jews would know, it clears, it shows even more clarity as to what is going on here. So I have to explain a few things. First of all, Bethphage. It's not really pronounced Bethphage. In Hebrew, it would be Bethphage. Or they don't pronounce the J, do they? Bethphage. Means the house of unripe figs, or fruit which does not fulfill its purpose. Also, Jesus sent 2 disciples. Beit has a numerical value of 2. The village over against Bethphage is Bethany, which means house of affliction, or house of dates, or figs, and out of affliction comes fruit. Those are the meanings of those 2 cities. Jesus began his journey from Bethany, the house of affliction. Jesus came out of the house of affliction to Bethphage, the house of unfulfilled fruit, to a house where the fruit is not ripened, situated upon the Mount of Olives. Misspelling there. The Mount of Olives, which is considered a place of hope. Also, remember that on the Mount of Olives, halfway down the mountain, is Gethsemane, which is the wine press. Okay, Jesus came past or through the wine press to arrive at Jerusalem, which is the foundation of peace. Jesus tells them to bring the colt, which Mark says, whereupon never man sat. The word for colt falls into the widest definition of ben or bane, meaning son, which is in its broadest form includes all firstborn livestock, all firstborn of the livestock. The prophecy contains 3 distinct Hebrew words for an ass. Sitting upon an ass or a donkey is chamar, Chamar, and I've got it on the paper here. Chamar, from a root meaning red, and a colt. So the chamar would be a red donkey, and a colt. And I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this right, Michael, but it's spelled like air, A-I-R, but I guess it would be Ayer.
I'm not sure on that. It sounds right.
A young male ass or donkey. The foal, literally the son of an ass or donkey. Athon, A-T-H-O-N. A she-ass, she-donkey, from a root meaning slow. So all of these meanings are expressed in Hebrew. If a Jew read this in Hebrew, he would know exactly what was going on here. That Jesus rode into, let me back up. He came from the house of affliction to the house of unripened fruit or unfulfilled fruit, from the Mount of Olives, a place of hope, who arrive in Jerusalem, the foundation of peace. And none of that came to fruition. I'll get there in a second. But this is a colt upon which no man has ever sat before. And it represents the son of the she-donkey or she-ass. Okay, all of this is instrumental. The donkey is the lowliest and most humble of all animals, except for sheep. So the Lamb of God was to ride upon a donkey, meek and lowly. The fact that no man ever sat upon him before demonstrates Christ's influence to tame the unruly soul within us. This was all done so that the prophecy would be fulfilled. By doing so, Jesus is admitting to the crowd. Now, you'll hear scholars all the time say Jesus never claimed to be God. Well, this is proof right here. He is admitting to the crowd that he is indeed the Messiah, the one prophesied in the scriptures. If he was not claiming to be the Messiah, he wouldn't have fulfilled that scripture. But by fulfilling that scripture, he is saying, okay, I am he. I am the king who is coming.
You know, that's also something that I discovered, you know, last, I guess around Easter time, I brought it up that the donkey was the only animal that needed a lamb to be sacrificed.
Oh, yes, yes.
And that's
Yes.
when Jesus came in.
He
on
was
top
the
of
lamb.
donkey. And the picture of the donkey has like a cross
Yeah.
naturally on his back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so amazing
Yeah.
all how this stuff
Yeah.
fits together.
Yeah, it is. And it's not by chance, any of it. Not by
There's
chance.
a reason, you know, all these things, these little bitty tiny things that we see in scripture, there's always a reason for it.
Always, always. The disciples went and did just as Jesus instructed them, and brought the donkey and the colt, and laid their clothes on them. Now this is instrumental too. And he sat on their clothes. Most of the crowd spread their garments or clothes in the road, and others were cutting branches from the trees and spreading them in the road. Jesus sat upon their clothes, and the multitude spread their garments along the road for Jesus to ride over. Now here's the point. The clothes and the garments that they placed on the donkey for him to sit upon were their talits, their prayer shawls. These were the holiest garments they owned, and they represented their relationship with Adonai. And by placing them on the donkey for Jesus to sit upon, and I don't mean this to sound vulgar, but when someone sits on something, it's not considered to be a holy thing. Jesus was, in other words, their righteousness was as filthy rags for him to sit on. Okay? With their actions, they were proclaiming Jesus as their Messiah. Those who cut branches were cutting palm branches as a sign of reverence and worship. In the Feast of Tabernacles, I believe it is, there is a point where the people wave palm branches as a symbol of the coming of their Messiah. Well, they are waving palm branches today, on this instance, because their Messiah has come. Okay? And he came, well, I think I've got it a little farther down, but he came to, he said, the king comes riding meek and lowly on a donkey. So that's meaning he is claiming to be their king. He came for them either to do one of two things. Either to accept him as their Messiah, their king, or to accept him as the Lamb of sacrifice. And by rejecting him as king, that's what they did. Okay? And the multitudes, verse 9, the multitudes that went before and that followed cried, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. In Hebrew, the multitudes were saying, Son of David or Messiah, please save us right now. Hosanna. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Save us in the highest, or save us from the highest, meaning God's wrath, or save us by means of the highest, meaning God's presence. So they're acknowledging that Jesus has the presence of God with him. They were acknowledging that Jesus was sent by God by this worship service, but this worship service would not last long. In less than a week, some of these very same people will cry, "Crucify him." Now, it would appear that I've gone a long way here to get here, but here we are. The word Baruch means blessed. Baruch begins with the letter Bet, which also means blessed. Bashem also begins with the letter Bet. As we'll see shortly in the next page, which we won't get to today, the letter Bet also represents the sonship of Christ. We will be shortly also see that the letter Bet, when used at the beginning of a word, means in. So the phrase Baruch haba Adonai is blessed by God. The Jews already recognized that Jesus was blessed by God, otherwise he could not perform the miracles that he did. Whereas Baruch haba Beshem Adonai, blessed is the one who comes in the name of Adonai. So Jesus is blessed as he came in the name of God, in the name of God. But they were just short of the fact that he was God. Okay, that's where we'll stop for today.
Dave, was that the first time there had ever been a high priest sit and ride on a donkey
Yeah,
in the streets?
Yeah. Because the high priests were not considered to be meek. The high priests were lofty individuals.